All right, so this is the 80 Money Show, your one-stop destination for all your personal finance queries, and we have lined up a power-packed show, and here's what you should expect from the show today. First up, we will discuss about the exclusions in the health insurance plans that you as a customer should be aware of before buying a health insurance plan. So we will be joined by Siddharth Singhal, business head, health insurance policybazaar.com. Next, on our tax guide segment, we will explain what exactly is AIS or Annual Information Statement. We will be joined by Preeti Khurana, Chief Editor, Clear Tax, and in our last leg we will give you a complete guide on how to go about investing in India if you happen to be an NRI. We will also throw upon the counter to get your portfolio strategies checked. So send us your portfolio queries on our WhatsApp number, which is 865-797-4571, or you can also email us your queries on the Money Show at etnow.tv. So that's the lineup for the show, and let's start with the health insurance. Now, it is no secret that health insurance plans do not cover each and every medical expense, and it is also quite obvious that every health insurance comes with a list of inclusions and exclusions. Now, exclusions are, however, the ones that can give you a bad surprise if you do not know about them beforehand, and therefore today on the ET Money Show, we will take you through the exclusions that you should know about. Let's bring on board Siddharth Singhal, business head, health insurance policybazaar.com. Siddharth, good evening and welcome to the show. Talking about health insurance, a very crucial aspect of financial planning, one of the initial steps that you should be taking to secure your and your family's health. But a lot of people don't know about how to go about it, in the sense lack of awareness in the do's and don'ts that get into buying a proper health insurance plan. Now, talking about exclusions, a lot of people don't know about all this beforehand, and only once they apply for a health insurance, and if they have a good agent who's selling them that product, might inform them about the exclusions and inclusions, or the capping period which are there for certain diseases or illnesses. But today the purpose of having you on the show is that we can talk about these exclusions and inform our viewers beforehand that if at all they plan to buy a health insurance, they should factor in these exclusions and also get a complete list of exclusions from the insurance policy from wherever they are planning to buy one. So how do you define exclusions in the language of a health insurance company? How do they define exclusions in a health insurance product? Siddharth.
Thank you. First of all, good evening, Kavita. Thanks for having me on your show. I think it's always lovely to talk about health insurance more, and always get this opportunity to educate the customers about health insurance, and especially what is included and what is not included. So coming directly to the question, you asked me about what is exclusion. So exclusion in very simple terms means the kind of situations or the kind of scenarios which are beyond the scope of coverage in a health insurance policy. A health insurance is basically nothing but a promise between the health insurance company and the customer that in certain scenarios, if should you happen to be in that scenario, we will cover your risk, right? So exclusion in very simple terms means those scenarios which will be beyond that promise, which will be beyond that contract between the health insurance company and the customer. So broadly, we classify exclusions as three types of broadly, exclusions or the scenarios which will are beyond the scope of a regular health insurance policy, and which every customer while buying their health insurance policy should definitely look for. Right. So the first and the foremost is the exclusions, which or the scenarios which will are never covered in a health insurance policy. The second would be the scenarios or the exclusions which are covered after some time, after you spend some years in the policy. The third scenario is usually the exclusions or the scenarios wherein these are usually not covered, but they can now be covered with with an additional premium or buying some sort of a rider along with the health insurance policy. So broadly, these are the three types of exclusion. So I'll just deep dive one by one into it. One is it's
I
not
think let's
covered at all.
Siddharth, let's take it one by one. Okay. So if you can name a few exclusions which are permanently excluded from your health insurance policy.
Sure. So exclusions which are always there, which are never covered by a health insurance policy, are very simple: attempt to suicide or any kind of a self-injury that a person gets into and inflicts upon themselves. Any situations of a drink and drive, any cosmetic treatments or abortions. Uh, for a few insurance companies also put something called as permanent exclusions. Basically, these are situations if somebody had a congenital disease, or somebody is suffering from a very grave situation. For example, somebody suffering from cancer, I'm just or HIV AIDS example. So a health insurance company may issue the policy, but with a permanent exclusion of that particular grave condition. So basically, the person will not be able to get a health insurance coverage for that particular exclusion. But let's say the person suffering from cancer gets into an accident, so he'll be at least covered for an accident kind of a situation. So these are certain scenarios which are not covered at all, mostly by almost all the insurance companies.
So these are permanent exclusion, and anywhere you go and apply for one, you will not get this thing covered, even by paying a higher premium, right, Siddharth?
Yes. So there are very few, I just took an example of cancer. So there are very, very few plans. There are plans which are available in the market where the
Yeah,
customers
there are
can get it.
also cancer-specific policies now, and a
Yes.
lot of health insurance policy maybe cover this, but then after a certain period of waiting.
Exactly. Yes, yes. So that basically is the second point, that there are certain exclusions which are covered after some time, which are
Ha.
normally we call them as waiting periods, right? So if let's say you buy a policy, health insurance policy today, so broadly there are three types of waiting periods. One is the initial waiting period, we call it, that is for the next 30 days from the date of you get the policy. So next 30 days, no hospitalization will be covered until and unless it's an accidental case. Only accidents would be covered, but only after for a regular any kind of you fall ill or you develop any disease, etc. So that will be covered after 30 days. So that's called the first initial waiting period. The second type of waiting period, we call it as specific diseases waiting period. This is usually 2 years of waiting period, in a health insurance policy. What it means is very
But
slow growing diseases.
are these critical illnesses? No, no, or they are
Yes,
separate.
it could be, slow growing diseases, basically, like cataract or, hernia, etc., which are not present. We don't have any symptoms as of now, but usually after 2 years, the insurance companies cover these policies, these illnesses. The third type is basically pre-existing diseases. So example, right now, when I'm purchasing a health insurance policy, I already am suffering from hypertension or diabetes or thyroid, etc. So, health insurance companies put a pre-existing disease waiting period, which typically is of 3 years or 4 years, depending on policy to policy, plan to plan. What it means is, in these 3 or 4 years, you will not be able to claim related to this specific illness. But yes, after you serve the waiting period, then you are free to claim related to these illnesses. So these are, in a way, exclusions which are covered, but after some time.
Something now, the diseases or illnesses that fall under these different heads of waiting periods, do we have to pay more premium once we want the coverage after the waiting period, or it will be accommodated as per the premium that you're paying now?
What really happens if you choose to opt for a regular waiting period? For example, I am suffering from diabetes. The policy says that you have to serve 4 years of waiting period. Then if I complete my 4 years, I don't need to pay anything extra. After I've served my 4 years already in the policy, then I'll be free to claim related to diabetes. However, should I choose that I don't need to wait for 4 years? Is there a possibility for me to cover my diabetes problem, right after 1 year? So yes, there are a few companies, a few plans which offer this benefit now. What it means is reduced waiting period. So you pay certain extra premium, and that waiting period can be reduced from 4 years to 1 year. So it's very actually beneficial to the customers who already have any kind of a pre-existing disease. It gives them the option to get that coverage very early on compared to a regular plan.
Yeah, this waiting period is all the more crucial when a person wants to start planning a family, right? In case of pregnancy and related conditions, do they have a waiting period for this, or it is a permanent exclusion?
No, so the good thing is, as a maternity is definitely a topic that we all talk about in terms of in the health insurance parlance. Uh, Maternity is not a permanent exclusion. There is again a waiting period. So some policies offer a 1 year waiting period, a 2 year waiting period, or it can go up to 4 year waiting period. That you have a policy. If you buy it today, you can plan for maternity maybe 2 years down the line, and after 2 years expenses related to maternity will be covered. So it's not a permanent exclusion, to answer your question, but these maternity plans offer some sort of a waiting period that the customer needs to serve for first.
There are a lot of illnesses mentioned in the list that I can see in front of me. So there's dental, hearing and vision, there's mental illness, deliberate injuries. Alternative theories come under the head of permanent exclusions. Now, talking about mental illness and cosmetic surgeries, aren't health insurance policies now open for it? And in fact, there's a mandate, especially for mental illness, that's been given from the IRDAI also to have this thing covered.
Yes. So you rightly said, Kavita. So mental illness at one point in time, when we talk about it a couple of years back, was a taboo. I mean, it was largely reflected in the society as well. But now, we have a lot of awareness about mental illnesses, and both the insurance companies and the regulator have taken a note of it. And now mental illnesses are covered as a part of the health insurance policy. At one point in time, couple of years back, they were permanently excluded. So a person having a mental illness was not able to get a health insurance cover. But now things have changed. A person having a mental illness will be treated as a person having a physical illness. So mental illness and physical illness will be treated at par and will be, kind of accorded the same kind of a treatment in a health insurance policy. So if a person is having a mental illness, he's definitely able to get a health insurance cover. But if it's and just like a physical illness, but the person will have to serve a certain waiting period. That is like, if it's a pre-existing, so the person would need to serve at least 3 years or 4 years in the health insurance policy.
Sure. Let's talk about senior citizens. Now, let's assume that someone at the age of 60 is going out to buy a health insurance plan. They'll be having a number of exclusions, right? How do they get the best out of what's available for them when they want to opt for a health insurance plan?
Okay. So I think, the first and the foremost advice to all the viewers would be to, opt for a health insurance policy as soon as you can, and preferably as young as you are, because that's how you have a lot of choices in your hand to go for a health insurance policy. But now coming back to the main question of how a senior citizen can, go for a health insurance plan. So typically now a lot of health insurance plans are available specifically designed for the senior citizens. Usually at the age of 60 and 65, there's a more likelihood to make a claim, because obviously you are aged, you already might have some disease, etc. A lot of companies, they offer plans, the typical premium goes high. So they give the option to the customers to either opt for certain part as co-payment. Co-payment is basically, you have to choose a certain share of the medical bill as a part of the arrangement, or you can opt for a small deductible. Deductible means that the first 10,000 or 20,000 rupees you will need to pay from your own pocket. So for senior citizens now, there are wide variety of plans. There are plans with no kind of co-payment, no kind of deductible. A person can choose that as well, but the premium typically goes a bit higher on that side. So if a person is a bit cost cost conscious, so they can then choose for plans which have certain portion as a co-payment, or certain portion as this thing. So, and the good thing now is for senior citizens as well, there are a lot of covers which are available, which typically cover, diabetes or hypertension, which a lot of people in India now suffer from. It's a very common disease now, being suffering from diabetes or hypertension. So now a lot of insurance companies do also offer the option of a day one cover, that, specifically diabetes and hypertension can be covered from day one if you pay certain extra premium while you're buying a health insurance plan.
Sure. So now looking at the list of exclusions, Siddharth, what will be the best way to make the most out of it? Now, permanent exclusions, we cannot do anything, okay? But then talking about the waiting period, a lot of it you've already answered, that how one can pay a little more premium and then get the waiting period reduced. But would that be ideal? Or till the time, if you're not able to do that, maybe just get a rider for yourself. How should one go about it?
Sure. So I will take a minute to explain this, Kavita. So, for example, you are somebody, a customer who has I'll just start with a customer who already has a kind of a pre-existing disease. If you think that your pre-existing disease is very manageable, it's a very harmless, you maintain a balance, like you have a diabetes, which is in the range of 120, 150 around, and you are able to manage it, then it's perfectly okay to serve waiting periods for 3-4 years, and you don't you can get covered after 3-4 years. But if you are maybe a highly more diabetic, or you have a little more grave condition, and you think that having a reduced waiting period would be in best interest to you, so that if there is a hospitalization due to that condition, because you're already it's on the higher side, so I think then in that scenario the customer should definitely look for day one covers or reduced waiting periods. The premium cost would be slightly more, only maybe 10 to 15%, but yes, it will give you the benefit or the mental peace of being covered from very very short period, in very very short period of time. Similarly, if you are somebody has a mental illness which is already covered, but we all know that most of the mental illness treatment happens out of hospital. Basically, it happens through doctor consultations, regular follow-ups, which is usually not covered in a health insurance policy. So a customer can then look to buy for OPD riders. Now they are very attractive OPD riders, which cover health insurance, which cover basically the doctor consultations or the pharmacies, or they contain diagnostic tests as well. So I think from a customer choice perspective, in last 1 to 2 years, what we've seen is a lot of products coming in which are aimed at different types of customers, addressing different types of customer needs. If you have a PD, there is a day one rider for you. If you have, let's say, a mental illness, you have OPD riders also with you. If you're planning to start a family, you are a young couple, then there are plans which are specifically designed for maternity, and that can give you lower waiting periods. So I think it's very important for the customer to read the terms and conditions, and also state out what is their need, what is it they think in next 2 to 3 years, what is their plan, so that any advisor can give them the best advice and what plans is most suitable to them.
One last question, Siddharth. Now, these exclusions that we're talking about, are they applied on family floaters and an individual health policies?
Yes. So, see, some of the, for example, we spoke about the first, attempt to suicide or drink and drive, etc. cases, or cosmetic. Yes. So these are both applied on a family floater and an individual policy. So yeah.
So I think we've got most of the questions which are concerning for our viewers answered by you. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for making time and being on the show and explaining all the aspects of exclusions in health insurance policy to our viewers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kavita.
With that, we'll slip into a short break, but then post that, let's talk about income tax, and let's get all the queries related to AIS answered from our guest today after this break.